Hey peeps, welcome to another video. Today I'm going to be doing a Q&A. Back in April I asked you guys for some questions. I also asked if you wanted any sew-alongs, tutorials, that kind of thing. The tutorials and sew-alongs are in the works. They will be out this month. You heard it here. But you also sent me some questions. So without further ado, let's jump straight into it. So the first question is from Ruby Loves Rocket, and it is, do you ever worry that sewing as a job instead of just a hobby will take the joy out of the process? Like, I have to make this dress versus I want to make this dress. And she's asking because she's thought about starting a blog or other such things and has worried about the added pressure of the schedule or viewer expectation to turn something I love into a chore or hassle. How do you keep it all fresh and balanced? That's a really good question. I kind of fell into this making a living from sewing completely by accident. I had a very interesting job as a Playboy bunny at the casino in London. I was a croupier for them, and whilst it was really good money for a fine out 40-hour week, it was also working 10 p.m. till 6 a.m. or the worst one, which was 6 a.m. till 2 p.m. in the afternoon. I am not a morning person. I don't mind going to bed at 6, but I don't want to have to get up and go to work at 6, especially when you had to have full hair and makeup. I was very lucky. My then partner knew that I enjoyed sewing, knew that I wasn't overly happy with the hours that I was working, and he enabled me to set up Kittenish Behaviour as it is now. It had been a blog beforehand, but it just made sense for me to carry that over and use that as the brand name. I didn't even really think about the fact that I'd be sewing for other people for a living, because it was just something that I loved doing. And now we're nearly 6 years later, 5.5 years later, I still love it. I have to admit, every now and again I will get something come through the door and it will be like, you want me to wait what now? For example, the prom dress that I made for Hannah, the black silk dupioni with the long sleeves. I was not on board with those long sleeves at all. I was like, don't want to do it. The dress is going to look beautiful. It's going to be really nice without them, and did it, and she put it on and it looked amazing on her, and it was something that she really wanted, and it was so happy to see her happy, which is where I get the joy out of something, doing what I do. The other side of that question as well is that you're thinking about starting a vlog or a blog or something like that. My advice is do it. When I started mine in March last year, my productivity skyrocketed because I didn't feel accountable, but I just had this I had this end goal that I needed to get this stuff made for, to then show it off. So yes, there was a reader expectation there, but I found that that really helpful for me to make me actually sew, because back then I didn't have the physical shop that I have now. So I was working from home, and you know, I was doing customer work, but then the motivation to make stuff for myself when I wasn't really going anywhere or doing anything was quite low. So the having this thing that I had to make these garments for really helped me with my productivity and wanting to make stuff. And kind of to begin with, I was churning out like the same dress in different fabrics, because it was just like, oh, I really like that. But since then I've started to challenge myself more and make more different things, and you know, started working with knit fabrics and trying different patterns. So for me personally, the reader expectation or the viewer expectation has been brilliant and really helpful. And I also find that if I say I'm going to do something at the beginning of the month and then I don't feel it halfway through and I change my mind or I add something in different and I put that in my lookbook at the end of the month, nobody cares. You guys love seeing the things that I make. You have really constructive criticism for me, which I appreciate. You know, if I haven't made something that I said I was going to make, it's usually percolating in the back of my brain and will eventually materialize at some point. But so far nobody has berated me for, but you said you were going to do. Yeah, so my advice, do it. That's a very long, rambly, waffly answer, but you know and love my waffle, so yeah, hope that is answered your question. Okay, so next we've got a question from Laura Salsa, and the question is, you often talk about the main house and going up to your house, so always wondering if it's another floor or a separate building, and maybe nice to share a bit on your education or training, career, and how you got into sewing and starting a business. Well, I've kind of answered the last bit of your question with the last question. My training, I have no formal training. I left school at 16. I did a YTS apprenticeship as a travel agent for 3 years. I then got discovered as a model, so I did that for about 10 years. In London, I was a spokesperson for brands. I was a dancer. I hosted charity events for people, for like black tie events where they wanted pretty girls to basically sell raffle tickets, that kind of stuff. Went from that, I then applied for a whole bunch of jobs in the fashion industry. I had five interviews with Michael Kors for their new shop on Bond Street, and didn't get that job. Topshop wouldn't hire me as a sales girl, but they also, because they said I had too much experience, I'm guessing of life, because I didn't have shop retail, not for years anyway, and only selling holidays. So they interviewed me for a manager's position, but I was unsuccessful at that as well. And then I came across the advert for Playboy, the casino. I'd been to casinos, I had gambled as a customer, was always intrigued by it. It never occurred to me to be a career, but yeah, so I applied for Playboy. There were over 3,500 applicants for the positions. There were 80 positions, including the croupiers and the valets, which are the waitresses. I was successful. We had really interesting interviews. It was a big group interview to begin with, and you had to get up and like do a song and dance routine, and it was a very interactive one. There was another piece where you had to get up and tell 5 things about yourself, one of which had to be a lie, and everyone else had to kind of try and discover which the lie was. And there was a standard interview, there was a colourblind test, there was a maths test, there was a 2-camera piece, which I remember took place in this little kind of broom closety place, and I was one of the last to do it, and I was baking hot. My hair I'd curled it and it had all fallen down. I was bright red because I was so hot, so I must have looked awful on that, but for some reason they invited me to the second interview. Camera battery died halfway through that, so I'd gotten as far as the first round of interviews with Playboy. We then went on to have a second interview. There were 100 girls invited to that, and there were 80 positions, so the chances of getting the job were pretty good. It was a cocktail party, and all the managers from the club were there, and they all had like a secret, and you had to engage them in conversation, find out the secret without actually asking them directly what their secret was. So I got the job, I got offered the job as a croupier, which was amazing. 10 weeks of training. I made some amazing friends, some lifelong friends out of that as well, which is wonderful. And then yeah, so I did that for about two and a half years, which it was really enjoyable, but it was really hard work. The hours were what made it hard work, and some of the customers. But yeah, it was so much fun. And then, as I mentioned, I met somebody. He was lovely enough to help me start the company, and that's what happened. So you also asked when I talk about the main house and my house. So when I started my company, I was still living in London, and yeah, London rents are expensive. Mum and Dad at the time were living over in Saudi Arabia because Mum had a job over there, and so the house was empty, and they decided not to rent it out because they'd had a bad experience previously. So we had friends and family coming and staying in the house every now and again to try and just keep it ticking over, and they mentioned to me that perhaps maybe I'd be interested in a house sitting, so I thought I could do that. Bit of a change from central London to St Lawrence, but it was good, and I was here for about 1.5 years, and then Mum and Dad came home. Mum decided she wanted to retire, and I had to give them their house back. So yeah, they wanted their house back, funnily enough. Now they were always going to build a sewing studio in the back garden for Mum, and the sewing studio just got a little bit grander, and yeah, it's now the Shan Shed, and they let me decorate it, which was a big mistake because it is completely to my taste, and so I am basically never moving out. I mean, I have sea views behind me, behind you, and yeah, like I say, it's all decorated to my taste. I will be doing a house tour or a studio tour sometime in the future. I just got to hang some pictures on the very limited wall space that I have and sort the curtains out and make some cushions and stuff. But yes, I will be doing a little tour of my little kingdom. So yeah, when I talk about the main house, that is the main house down at the front of the plot of land, and then I have a separate studio towards the back in the back garden. So very lucky, I know. So the final question is from Pixie Pins, which is Linda and Miss Millie here on YouTube, and they are asked, how did you get where you are now? How did you start your business? And did you say you'd been married? Yes, I have been married. Technically, I still am. Next question. How did I start my business? Well, I've kind of talked through how I actually started Kittenish Behaviour, but as I said, I was working from home for the majority of the time down here on the island, and whilst that was lovely, it was very isolating, especially given that the village we live in only has a post office and no pub and very little sort of social life going on. So when Mum and Dad were back, we actually, the chili farm, they do amazing salad dressings, which is basically balsamic vinegar, chili and some kind of fruit, fig, raspberry, strawberry, and my sister-in-law loves them. And we were going to go and get her a couple of bottles of the raspberry one because that's her favourite. And we turned up at the chili farm, and the what was then Island Artisan, which is now Island Originals tunnel, had been opened like a week and a half beforehand. And there were probably about 6 or 7 people in there. And so we kind of went and bought the salad dressing and walked in, had a look round, and I spoke to Jeff originally and then Fabi, who was running Island Artisan, and yeah, took a space and haven't looked back since. So the reason I have my shop is because of salad dressing and Big Bird, yes. So I hope that was interesting. I mean, I know I waffle on a lot in my vlogs anyway, and I've done a couple of interviews. So there's that sewing blab one, which I'll link down below if you want to listen to me waffle at Maya and Dawn for an hour. That was so much fun, even if it was like 1 o'clock in the morning. But yeah, so hopefully that's just given you a little bit more insight into who I am and how I came to be where I am now. So I really hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, please give it a thumbs up. If you haven't yet, please subscribe, and I will see you again very soon. Bye!